Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. After World War II, various world leaders made statements to the effect of history is written by the victors. One victor who actually did rewrite history was Al Gore. He became vice president in January 1993. Shortly thereafter, he contacted my good friend Dr. Bill Gray of Colorado State University. Bill Gray was considered the world's top tropical meteorologist, and he was the man who invented modern hurricane forecasting. Al Gore invited Dr. Gray to a global warming conference he was holding in Washington, D.C. Dr. Gray said he would be happy to attend, but told Al Gore that he wasn't a big fan of Gore's global warming theories. Dr. Gray's work had been funded by the U.S. government for decades, but after he told Al Gore that he never got another penny out of the U.S. government. Al Gore made it clear to the academic community that their ongoing funding was dependent on supporting his theories. And there was general compliance in the academic community. The rewriting of history began. The 1990 report of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change included this discussion of sea level. They said there's no convincing evidence of an acceleration in global sea level rise during the 20th century. But in the 2001 report, they completely changed their story. The 2001 report said, it is very likely that the 20th century warming has contributed significantly to the observed sea level rise. Between 1990 and 2001, the history of sea level was rewritten. Now let's take a look at sea ice. The 1990 United Nations report showed that Arctic sea ice extent increased from 1974 until 1990, with 1979 being the peak year. But in the 2001 report, the United Nations rewrote the history of Arctic sea ice. The 1990 report showed a sharp decline in Arctic sea ice from 1974 to 1990, which is the exact opposite of what the 1990 report showed. The history of Arctic sea ice had been rewritten. The 1990 United Nations report showed that Earth was much warmer 800 years ago. The report showed a very warm medieval warm period and a very cold Little Ice Age. But in the 2001 report, the medieval warm period disappeared and the Little Ice Age disappeared. It was replaced by Michael Mann's fraudulent hockey stick. In 2006, Dr. David Deming of the University of Oklahoma gave this testimony to the U.S. Senate. In 1995, he published a short paper showing how borehole temperature data recorded a warming of about 1 degree Celsius in North America over the last 100 to 150 years. The week the article appeared, he was contacted by a reporter for National Public Radio. The reporter offered to interview him, but only if he would state that the warming was due to human activity. When Dr. Deming refused to do so, the NPR reporter hung up on him. Dr. Deming went on, I had another interesting experience around the time my paper in Science was published. I received an astonishing email from a major researcher in the area of climate change. He said, we have to get rid of the medieval warm period. And that's exactly what happened. Between 1990 and 2001, the medieval warm period disappeared. In 1999, this was the official NASA U.S. temperature graph. It showed that 1934 was the warmest year in the United States, and there was a sharp cooling trend through the end of the 20th century. But over the next couple of years, the history of the United States was rewritten. The data was altered, and the cooling trend turned into a warming trend. And since then, the data tampering has continued to get worse. Past U.S. temperatures have been massively cooled, while recent temperatures have been increased above the thermometer readings. This was the front page of the New York Times on January 26, 1989. U.S. data since 1895 failed to show warming trend. That didn't work for Al Gore's global warming theory, so as vice president, he got U.S. agencies to change the data. Al Gore has been tremendously influential in the climate scam. In 2006, he said we only had 10 years to save the planet from global warming. And also in 2006, he released a science fiction movie about climate, which was shown to billions of school children around the world. The point of his movie was to convince school children that the burning of fossil fuels causes bad weather. And now we have a generation of children who are largely convinced of this superstition. For destroying the field of science and corrupting children's minds, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2007. At that ceremony, he solemnly predicted an ice-free Arctic by the year 2014.
Another new study to be presented by U.S. Navy researchers later this week warns it could happen in as little as 7 years. 7 years from now. In the last few months, it has been harder and harder to misinterpret the signs that our world is spinning out of kilter.
His forecast didn't do too well. There's more sea ice now than there was 15 years ago when he made that prediction. Al Gore has been rewarded handsomely for his corruption of science and corruption of children's minds. Besides winning the Nobel Prize, Al Gore also sold his green television network to a bunch of Middle East oil producers for $500 million. Fraud in government pays extremely well. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on the global warming cabal for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki, and Upala on the web at realclimatescience.com.